Welcome back to the Iowa State University Beef Teaching Farm. Today we're going to talk about, once again, for the second year in a row, how we're going to manage these pastures when we're short on water. We're going to talk to you about it coming up right after this.
Beef Teaching Farm is a place where producers,
entrepreneurs,
faculty,
innovators,
consumers,
and most of all, our students
have an opportunity to learn.
We strive for excellence in the beef business and provide an environment for others to engage in production agriculture.
Through teaching, advocacy, and hands-on instruction,
we can grow the next generation of beef producers.
Welcome back to the Teaching Farm. This year we're going to talk again about how to manage pastures in a drought. This year has some lessons to be learned, and we're going to manage this actually quite differently than we did last year. If you remember back to last year, we got dry towards the end of the summer. This year we started off the year actually pretty dry without a lot of subsoil moisture. So we had a really good first flush of growth in the spring. As you can see, we've got one paddock here behind us that we haven't clipped yet. All of the rest of our paddocks, if you'll notice, have been clipped. So we had quite a bit of growth. We've come through, we've actually done 2 grazing sessions on all of our paddocks, but we actually pulled our cows about a week ago, and we've elected to start feeding those cows. The reason for it is that our pastures are not abused yet. We're gonna come through and get them finished up and clipped when we get a little bit more rain here and things are starting to grow again. But we've got grass down here that's actually in pretty good shape. We've got some orchard here that's starting to come back. So we elected to go ahead and pull our cows before we graze these paddocks down and pastures down really short. Now we're short on subsoil moisture. We really can't do anything about that. But by not taking them down really tight, what we've done is we've left the ground covered. We've got more moisture in our soil. Our soil temperatures are a little bit cooler than if we'd have grazed those paddocks down really tight. The name of the game for me when we get into a stretch like this is conserving my water and my soil moisture that I have currently in the ground. If we can start catching 1/10 here, 2/10 here, you'd be amazed if you leave these paddocks a little bit longer and can be responsible and leave some grass out here, how fast they will rebound and grow back. If we would graze these down tight now to try and get away from having to feed these cows, what'll happen is I know I'm not going to be back out on these paddocks for the rest of the year, or it may be extreme late fall. So the name of the game when we get into a drought situation for us is leaving as much leaf area remaining and intact on these plants as we can, so that we shorten up that recovery time when we do get moisture. These paddocks and pastures are really short on moisture right now. We've got a lot of leaf area, so it's not going to take much water to get these guys up and going. If you'll notice here, these plants are all active and growing. It's not like they just got grazed where we don't have an active growing leaf area. So we're in a really good spot, but with only maybe a week of grazing, we'd be in a really bad spot really fast. So that's kind of what I like to do, is make the decision to go ahead and feed those cows, buy us a little bit of rest and time out here on the paddocks. We have the ability that we can make our paddocks larger or smaller to suit kind of what we need to for grazing. Remember, on our operation, when we make those paddocks smaller, we're going to increase our utilization rate. We're going to leave a little bit less leaf area, but we will actually be doubling the amount of rest that we give those paddocks. So there's some things that you may be able to do in your operation with the amount of rest that you have on your paddocks that can also be really beneficial. So sit down, look at your operation, see how you can get more rest, leave more leaf area, conserve more water in the soil when we get into these times where Mother Nature is just not giving us the rainfall that we'd like. By locking our cows up, what it does is it gives me, I know pretty well that I'm going to be feeding cows for about 35 to 45 days, depending on what we get for moisture, maybe a little bit further out. But by not abusing them on the front side, what we do is we give ourselves a nice opportunity to do a really good job grazing later in the season, and maybe even still have the opportunity to stockpile graze some of our crops that we have available. Where we started to get dry and we had no subsoil moisture going into our grazing season this year, it's really challenged me as a manager because I'm so used to having that bank of subsoil moisture to play on to actually get me into later in the summer when we might have some warm season annual crops available that we would go and graze in this scenario. With this happening earlier in the year, end of May, June is really when our moisture turned off on us. We weren't quite to the point where we had those crops available to us to graze. We do have, if you look over there, we've got a field of millet coming up that we will utilize for our swath grazing, as we've always have, that we put in behind an oat crop. We did catch just enough rain to get that to germinate. And we also have some fescue that we're going to stockpile graze and utilize as well. We've had an okay first cutting of hay. So we've really got some options available to us. If you remember, we've carried over a large inventory of hay from last winter due to our extended grazing season. So what I want to challenge you as a manager, if you've got pastures and you're looking at them getting shorter and shorter every day, and maybe your cows are sliding backwards in body condition, go ahead, make the decision. Let's go ahead and feed them. If you've got those feedstuffs available, maybe we got to buy a little bit of feed, but let's manage this grass so that we have feed later on in the year is really the name of the game for us here at the Beef Teaching Farm. The other thing that we'll do this year, we've already made the decision that we're going to, we will also elect to early wean our calves to drop that cow's nutritional requirement so that we can actually get a little bit more bang for our buck out here. So sit down, be pretty honest with yourself, get a plan together on what you're gonna do if you're gonna have a dry summer, and manage your plan accordingly so that we can have some feed later on in the winter and drop those winter feed costs that are so important to our bottom line.